Hey, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Impact Discipleship podcast. We're so glad that you were with us. I am Mike Keaton, your host, and I am alongside of Ken Adams here, lead pastor of Crossroads Church and founder of Impact Discipleship Ministries. We are talking about disciple making and some of the things specifically that disciple making needs or requires. And one of those is intentional environments, Ken. And so when we think about intentional environments, can't avoid the idea of a small group. So why is a small group so key to the disciple making process?
Well, Mike, I want to begin with a verse.
It's a good place to start.
This is a verse out of Mark chapter 3, verse 14. This is a verse that really defines some of the intentionality that Jesus used in making disciples. It says that He appointed 12, whom He also named apostles, so that they might be with Him, and He might send them out to preach. Now, there's a couple of words in there that really summarize Jesus' whole approach to making disciples. The first two words are with them, and then the second two words are send them. And so those two words, first two words, with Him, indicate to us that Jesus was very intentional about what He did with His disciples while He was with them. Those two words tell us that He was using certain environments to sort of shape them and to mold them, to teach them and to train them, so that once He left them, He could send them out. They would know what to do. So the truth is that Jesus did make disciples in a small group, but that's not the only thing He did. Is that Jesus really had three very intentional environments. Jesus used a large group, Jesus used a small group, and Jesus used hands-on ministry experiences. I would say He took them into the field of ministry. So when you go back to the large group, there were times when Jesus would be teaching the multitudes, and His disciples would be along with Him. Sometimes they would even debrief on what He taught afterwards. And so those times often took place in that small group, when they would withdraw from the crowds and get alone by themselves. There were some times when Jesus would take His disciples with Him into ministry situations where they would really get very hands-on, practical application for ministry. So Jesus was very intentional, not just about one environment, but Jesus used three different environments. And so I think we make a mistake sometimes of thinking that it only happens in a small group. There's a lot of it that happens in a small group, but that's not the only place that disciple making is done. You know, I think the reason that Jesus was so strategic in using these environments is because we're shaped by the environments that we place ourselves in. You know, you think about the fact that Jesus used a large group and a small group and ministry experiences. He used all of those very strategically in building a fully trained disciple. And so we could think of it in our lives like this, that we want to grow academically. We go to send our child to a school, or we go to university. We put ourselves in an environment where we're going to be challenged academically. If we want to get our bodies in shape, or if we want to be healthier, we might go to a gym. Why? Because we're shaped by the environment. Because we put ourselves in an environment where we'll get the right result. If we are a musician or an actor or something like that, we put ourselves in a studio where we learn how to play an instrument, or we learn how to act, or whatever the case may be. So the truth is that we are shaped by the environments we place ourselves in. So Jesus was literally using those different environments to produce the kind of disciple that could fulfill His mission.
What do you think some of the advantages are to the small group environment?
Well, there are some things that happen in a small group that can't happen, or that probably don't happen anywhere else, partly because of the context of relationships. You know, I believe that Jesus used the small group as the primary vehicle for making disciples because it's the perfect place to develop Christ-like character and Christ-like conduct. And so Jesus used the context of relationships where, as Proverbs says, like iron against iron, so one man sharpens another. So Jesus developed his disciples in the context of a small group community because it is the ideal place for us to develop the characteristics of love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and gentleness and faithfulness and self-control. So that is the perfect environment for that to happen in. And so Jesus saw some tremendous advantages to using a small group to make disciples. And those same advantages exist today. You know, what I see happening a lot of times in a small group is that a small group is a great place for three key ingredients in disciple making. One is that it is a place where you can talk about, you can study, and you can apply the Word of God. It is a place where you can be led and you can be sensitive to the Spirit of God, and then it is a place where you can rub shoulders with the people of God. And so, Mike, I've seen this happen countless numbers of times. Whenever a person is exposed to the Word of God, to the Spirit of God, and to the people of God, over a period of time, they become more like the Son of God. And that's how you make disciples.
That's really, really good. You know, there's things that speak to me about this whole thing, the two words, with Him. That's just powerful to me. And then also just the idea of intentional environments.
Right.
You know, we have an environment, but there's got to be intention into that.
Yeah, exactly.
And so our desire is to lead those kind of environments, as we hope that you will as well in your disciple-making efforts, to put these individuals in environments where they will really, really grow, and specifically that small group environment. Thanks for tuning in today. We'll catch you next time on the Disciple Making Podcast.